So yeah, Romeo, when we chatted, he said, "No, my dad was actually on the run, and he ended up getting caught up. He went into jail for 6, 7 years, and then the more you research that, Jarmaine Dobbs Sr. was wanted by police for attempted homicide, assault with a deadly weapon, robbery, terrorist threats, and kidnapping. U.S. Marshals led a strike team along with two relatives. He was accused of attempting to murder a woman named Elaine Neal because they believed her son killed another member of their family." Looking back, Romeo's grateful all this happened when he was so naive. This is Romeo. Quote, "You don't really get that feeling of struggling or understanding what hurts you. If I was old enough to witness that, who knows who you become as you get older." I mean, that's just one of several traumatic incidents from his childhood. I mean, he brought up somebody named Jordan Patterson. They played Pop Warner together. Patterson gets caught up in gangs. 12:45 p.m., September 30th, 2020. Vehicle pulls up alongside his vehicle, opens fire. He's pronounced dead at the scene. Many stories like that, and stories of gang members trying to get him to join. We're reading into stuff because we have to read into stuff. Like, was there anything in his mind about going back to this area? Maybe. I don't know. Per Romeo Dobbs, it was something he ate when he first landed in Indianapolis at the combine, and he got food poisoning. So he gets food poisoning, and it was fairly immediate. Stomach hurting, chill bumps, sweating, couldn't really think straight. It was bad. It was terrible. Those are Dobbs's words. So he's meeting with 10 to 15 teams. He's stammering through conversation. Uh, he didn't sugarcoat it. He said it was a nightmare situation. Really, really bad. Couldn't even get through sentences because he was in that much pain. He lost 10 pounds that week alone. And he said he almost understood where teams were coming from when they described this as a mental breakdown. And you talked to these scouts, you talked to these teams that had these conversations with Romeo Dobbs. And what are they supposed to think, right? And it's not like he had the opportunity to circle back with them and say that this is why I was just out of it completely. On top of that, that night, he couldn't sleep. 1 a.m. bled to 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. He couldn't sleep until he did, and he overslept. And the phone in his hotel room went off, and he was late for a drug test. So that doesn't necessarily help his cause either. Long story short, Bob, there is a lot to Romeo Doubs. Right to, Keyshawn Johnson was a mentor. He links him up with Terry Robisky, one of the best wide receiver coaches in NFL history. Robisky just works this guy. Like, this is in part two if people want to check it out. I talked to Robisky about what he really put Romeo through. He said he wanted to mentally break him. He wanted to see how mentally tough this guy was. Brutal workouts, absolutely brutal workouts. And also taught him a lot of the stuff that we see on the field now, like little intricacies of the position, like how to kind of push a corner off without using your hands. He uses his shoulder to kind of get that separation so the refs don't see it. I mean, he's so nuanced with this route running. I mean, that's Terry Robisky's point, more detailed. So he's really familiar with the history of the Green Bay Packers wide receiver. He's really close with Ron Wolf, who we had on How the NFL Works last week. And
Ron
so
interviewed him for head coach in Green Bay. He interviewed Terry Robisky. Yes, he
there you
did.
have it. And
Mm-hmm.
Terry Robisky had the connection with scout Sammy Seal in Green Bay. So there's a reason the Packers knew what they needed to know about Romeo Doubs. But he said if Sterling Sharp, James Lofton, and Devontae Adams are tens, he calls Dobbs an 8.5 because he's not sure he has the confidence to say point blank quote, "I'm going to the Hall of Fame." Quote, "I think he's just playing the game to catch a lot of balls to help the Packers win. I don't think he goes out on Sunday to dominate that guy across from the line. The other group of guys I just called for you, they ain't shaking nobody's hand. They're kicking people's ass. I don't care if it was Deion Sanders or Rod Woodson, Charles Woodson. They're going to beat his ass into the ground, and they're going to put a dagger in your heart. James Lofton would put a dagger in your heart. Devontae Adams today is still putting the fear of God in people. I think that Romeo Doubs goes out there with a mindset of, quote, I'm going to bust my ass. I'm going to do what I got to do today to help my team win the game. I don't think he'll go to the game and say, "Well, I'm going to catch 11 for 192 and 2 touchdowns. I'm going to destroy this boy." He takes his time and he lets the game come to him. So I thought that was interesting because he was effusive with his praise of Romeo and the work that he really put him through to get him ready for the NFL. Now, Keyshawn Johnson, a mentor for Romeo, he grew up in the same area, right? South Central LA. He knows where he comes from. He knows how he's wired. He insisted that there is some shit to this guy, that everything that he kind of went through, everything that he witnessed makes him as a receiver. Here's what Keyshawn Johnson said. I always think that the best football players are the ones that have been through some stuff. That's been my motto for years. That dude can play, man. That dude has been through some stuff. You don't have to be from South Central. You can be from a little old country town somewhere and just go through the grind and the heartache and pain of not knowing where your next meal might come from. Those are always the guys I want. I want those guys because those are the guys I can rely on. We grew up in the same area. It's from knowing, been there, done that. And finally, just to put a bow on Romeo Doubs, this is why I was so perplexed, Bob. My takeaway from that conversation is this is a receiver who isn't getting too far ahead of himself. He isn't doing any of that. He isn't trying to manifest. Like he went out of his way to say, I don't manifest. I don't try to envision what I'm going to do into the future, how a game's going to go. Here's what Romeo said. Some may say you've got to manifest it. Yeah, I get that. But sometimes it's just the way how life is. You can sit here and say you want something and ultimately you don't get that. That's where the struggle starts. I'm a completely different guy when it comes to stuff like this. You've just got to let it come. Whenever the time's right, the time is right. I can't sit here and say, I want to be this all pro guy. And I get it. As an athlete, that's the mindset. You want to be the best ever, but that's not who I've been. I have to stay true to that. And people lose that at some point in their lifelong journey. I can't help but wonder if Romeo, for a week, did exactly that. Kind of lost it briefly, forgot what got him here. If he snaps back to who he's always been, one day at a time, going with the flow. Maybe he's not a Sterling Sharp, James Lofton, tear your heart out kind of receiver, but he's damn good, and the Packers need him.